Everybody, well, the big political story of the morning is in the Sunday Times, which says, revealed, Theresa May's secret Brexit deal. Well, there's no great surprise to anyone that listens to this show, because I've been saying for weeks that we're very, very close to a deal. It's a deal that will keep us in the customs union. It's a deal that will give us the promise of perhaps jam tomorrow. It's a deal where we're going to be told that the Irish border situation is solved. The devil will, of course, be in the detail, and David Davis writes in the same newspaper saying he wants to see the full legal guidance. He wants it to be out there and to be published. And over the course of the next hour or so, we're going to debate, is this deal a price worth paying? But before I get to that and get to you, I'm going to speak to somebody who's seen a lot of political crises in his life. He's a former Minister of State for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office under Margaret Thatcher. He was the Secretary of State for National Heritage under John Major, and he's seen one or two political crises over the years. David Mellor, good morning.
Morning, Nigel.
Before we get on to the politics of it, David, the news that broke within the last hour was that the former Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Civil Service, Sir Jeremy Hayward, has died from cancer at the age of 56, and Theresa May's been leading tributes to him. I understand that you knew him.
Oh, yes, he worked in... he was a senior private secretary in my office when I was Chief Secretary of the Treasury, and then, of course, for the Chancellor Norman Lamont. My abiding memory of Jeremy is him working hard into the night, processing papers, but also wreathed in cigarette smoke with a large ashtray completely filled to overflowing with things. And I remember thinking, shouldn't I be saying to him, Jeremy, come on, you don't need so much of that stuff. But anyway, sadly, he has died age 56, and the tragedy for him is that, of course, he had settled in as the most senior civil servant in this country and had a lot more to give, which he can't give and we can't benefit from.
No, very sad. Well, we pass on condolences to his family, to his friends, and David, thank you for telling us about the man himself. Now, David, you've probably seen this story out there today. Theresa May is pretty close to signing up to a deal, and I have to say, I think it's pretty much certain that she is going to sign up to keeping us into a customs union. I mean, how do you see this? Do you think that this is a price worth paying to get us out of the EU legally at the end of March next year?
I'm in two minds about it, Nigel, and I think we will want to study the small print about it. But you see, the thing about Brexit, and heaven knows I'm teaching my granny to suck eggs here, you are one of the principal advocates of Brexit. But the whole idea behind Brexit was it would give us the freedom of the seas. It would allow us to make arrangements as appropriate that would for the benefit of Britain without being tied down by EU rules and, of course, by a lot of other difficult EU rules on immigration and so on. And the danger has always been Brexit in name only. I think staying in the customs union smacks to me of Brexit in name only. But what do you think? I mean, this is not so much you asking me questions, but a discussion. You know a hell of a lot about this.
I tell you what I think. I think that she's already said she wants the transition period to go on for a further year, to the end of 2021. We're due a general election that has to take place by the spring of 2022. So basically, at the time of the next general election, we are going, if she gets this deal through Parliament, we are going to be in a position where we've not taken back control of our borders, not taken back control of our fisheries. We're not able to make our own trade deals, and financially, it won't be 39 billion we've given the EU. It'll be something closer to 60 billion. So I have to say, David, to me, it doesn't give us any of the possible benefits of Brexit. I know that school kids in 100 years will read, we left the treaty, but I think it needs to be opposed. But you went through all of this. I mean, you saw this with the Tory rebels back at Maastricht, and in the end, they towed the line with John Major. Will they do so this time?
I think it's a completely different situation. Maastricht was really about trying to get us some freedom within the EU framework, and the bees. I suppose we better watch our language here. John Major termed the bees, the Michael Patillos of this world. I think Michael's now relented of all of that. They were a relatively small group, although any group was a big group when John Major didn't have a majority, and any group is a big group when Theresa May doesn't. But I think, the problem with all of this is the salesman. If someone tries to sell you a used car, if the guy seems like a spiv, you're more skeptical. If the guy seems to be, a polished individual who could be your brother, then you might say that car's great and I'm going to buy it. Well, I mean, the problem for Theresa May is that she doesn't have a lot of credibility in either knowing what she stands for and then standing up for Britain's interests in trying to get it. I mean, I was checking through a few of my notes on these matters and came across two comments from her backbenchers, one on one side of the debate, the other on the other, which really sum up the amount of cynicism and skepticism there is on the Tory benches about Theresa May. Johnny Mercer, an ex-soldier, brave fellow, he's a Brexiteer. He said, does she think there's nothing worth fighting for? And I think that gets to the heart of the matter. Theresa May is not a fighter. Remember, she opted out of the referendum campaign.
Yeah, she was on the Remain side.
And then, of course, benefited from...
Yeah. I mean,
and if I might just quote the other one, from the other side, Nick Bowles, who's a stalwart thinker of original thoughts, who's a Remainer, but he said the trouble with Theresa May, she thinks one more concession and she'll get a deal, and that is the worry. And I believe when she exposes this stuff, I think a lot of people will think, if you'd fought harder, if you'd been a different sort of person, let's go back to a cliche. I was Margaret Thatcher's youngest minister for 4 years. I served in her government for 9 years, another 2 under John Major. Margaret Thatcher was a fighter. Theresa May is not a fighter. Would Margaret Thatcher be accepting a lot of this guff and what's led up to
no
it?
Way.
No,
absolutely no way.
No.
Yes. I mean, you can see that. But I mean, what happens at the next election? I mean, I know in '97 that the Conservative Party had been in power for a long time, but it had been very split over this European issue, giving Blair a huge opportunity. But if I'm a Conservative voter that believes in Brexit, and I get to the next election, and I've been told by Theresa May that I've got Brexit, but we've still effectively got open door immigration. We're still paying away money. I mean, couldn't this have disastrous electoral consequences for them?
Look, Nigel, this to me, and I started taking interest. I mean, sad life I have led. I started taking an interest in politics in my mid-teens. So I've been politically aware for more than 50 years and politically active for a lot of that time. I have never, ever, ever felt more depressed about the state of British politics. Well summed up. I think it was Douglas Hurd who said years ago, the issues get bigger and the politicians get smaller. And I think when you look at, the battle of the pygmies in the Tory party as to who will replace Theresa May, she's only there because she isn't one of them. And that's why she'll stay, because she isn't one of them. There's no obvious leader with any Thatcherite, let alone Churchillian qualities. But when you cast your eye around the rest of the political landscape, I mean, a Corbyn government would be a complete disaster for Britain. Britain would be led from further left than any British government has ever gone before. It would remind me, I'm old enough to have been a Foreign Office minister before the Iron Curtain fell. It'll be like revisiting East Germany, run by a bloke called Erich Honecker. Do you remember him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeremy Corbyn can be our Erich Honecker. And then you've got the Lib Dems, led by a charming fellow, but now way past his sell-by date. Where are the leaders to tackle the big problems? They don't.
No, I think that's a very fair point. But I have to say, I think Mr. Corbyn's chances of getting to power will be increased if she gets this deal through. That's just my thought on it. But another area where leadership is being discussed heavily is, of course, in Saudi Arabia. This new MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, comes in and we're told that Saudi Arabia is going to reform and women start driving. And you know Saudi Arabia well. What do you think the damage is between Saudi and the West after the murder of the journalist Khashoggi?
Well, I think it's a terrible thing. And, I've been to the Gulf on a lot of occasions. I first went to the Gulf nearly 40 years ago. And I have always been a stalwart supporter of the Gulf states on the basis they are a bastion against extremism, and it's good to have a friendly hand on the oil pump, as it were. But I look at what's happening in Saudi Arabia and feel deeply depressed. The gerontocracy that has traditionally run Saudi Arabia continues with King Salman, 82, and believed to be suffering from dementia. His son, Mohammed bin Salman, has seized power and seems to be an extremely reckless young man. First of all, destroying the unity of the Gulf by, as it were, putting Qatar onto the naughty step. There may be reasons for that, but on the whole, the Gulf survives best when it is united. This dreadful war in Yemen, cruel war in Yemen, where a lot of country faces mass starvation.
And in which UK weapons are being used, David. I mean, things that we manufacture are being used there.
Well, but I think, in a way, that's a sideshow. You mustn't, Nigel, just because you're a broadcaster, you don't mind me saying so, fall into the easy trap of facile comments about
a little bit of balance. A little bit of balance,
everything's our fault. Everything is our fault. But look, let me get to the main point. It's my fault for rambling off and giving you a chance to do this stuff at the broadcaster, an objective broadcaster stuff. A cap that fits uneasily, I'm sure you will agree.
Well, I'm doing my best, David,
But look, not a laughing matter what we now come to. I've never known anything like it in the Gulf, where a journalist who isn't even a fanatic, it's not like he's a fanatical jihadist, but a moderate, principled man who writes about the virtues of Saudi Arabia taking on democratic values. He's lured into the consulate in Turkey. He is then either hacked to pieces or strangled, set upon in a carefully planned operation where 15 men fly in and then fly out. It's an appalling, wretched, violent, vicious thing. And look, I don't care what anyone says. I forget it was in Lewis Carroll character who could believe 50 impossible things before breakfast. But you know what? I cannot believe that Mohammed bin Salman wasn't up to his neck in all of this.
No.
And my guess, Mystic Mello, predicts that he has enough enemies within the kingdom, including a number of people who were bounced out of the succession by him suddenly announcing himself as the successor to King Salman, thereby breaking the line. I suspect MBS may be on the way out. The only issue is when. But Saudi has lost. Look, Saudi doesn't have a great reputation, let's be honest. Internally, it's a repressive country, women's rights and things like that. I mean, although he now allows them to drive, are alien. Even worse, Nigel, and something that dear old Ken Livingstone of blessed memory, when I used to do a show with him, he always went on about, and he wasn't wrong. The extent to which Saudi money has been used in sensitive places like Pakistan and indeed the UK to subsidize extremist mosques preaching
this is the
kind of fanatical, and the fanatical view of Islam, which, when you look at some poor woman who had a row with some of her Islamic female friends, and she's now been in prison for 9 years, threatened with death, and they're now saying because she's being let off the death penalty, they're going to sort of do all manner of other awful things. What has happened to reason in this world? And Saudi Arabia has to carry a lot of the blame.
Yeah, well, I felt this, I have to say.
Madrasas in Pakistan.
I felt this, I've said this too for some time. And finally, what does Mystic Mellor say? Are we leaving the European Union on March the 29th at 11 p.m. or not?
I don't think so, because I think there are too many untied laces. But, what I find extraordinary, Nigel, is that Theresa May really doesn't have any idea of leadership. But those who claim to know so much better than her, the Blairs of this world, the Heseltines and all the rest of it, what they should be doing is going to their friends in the EU, instead of lecturing the British government, and they can make one of 2 points. One you will agree with, the other you won't. One point is, let us out on a sensible basis, because you, O mighty EU, have as much to lose, if not more, by an untidy exit for Britain than the British do. But the other thing they could be saying is, if they think the British public got it wrong last time and should have another go, they should try and prevail upon the EU to start making the kind of concessions that David Cameron, who thinks he's coming back, by the way.
No, I don't think so, somehow.
I thought it was April the 1st when I read that in the week. Anyway, but basically, you know, that David Cameron, when the world was young, like a few years ago, David Cameron promised that he was going to go and sort out the relationship with the EU, and if they wouldn't play ball and give Britain what was reasonable, he'd advocate going out. Well, they gave him nothing, and he advocated staying in the most ridiculously hysterical terms. But you know, if some of these so-called wise elder statesmen, the Blairs of this world, wanted to do something useful, they try, even this 11th hour, to make the EU offer something that showed that their whole conduct of negotiations was wrong. Now, you don't want that. I'm not sure whether I want that. But something has got to change.
No, they're almost,
as it stands, it's a mess.
No, they're actually, in my view, acting against the interests of our country. But hey, David, thanks ever so much for joining us. That was David Mellor with a fairly pessimistic take, I would say, on what's happening in Saudi Arabia. A pessimistic take on the ability of Theresa May to resemble anything close to a leader, and he's also pessimistic on Brexit. But, as I say, the Sunday Times have told us the deal is basically done. Is keeping the United Kingdom in a customs union a price worth paying in order to secure a deal? We'll debate that in a moment, but for now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show on LBC, and it's 20 minutes past 10.
This is LBC.
What's the smart way to enjoy a break from the old routine? Fly to Dublin with Aer Lingus from Gatwick and Heathrow and enjoy all the surprises of this incredible city. Take a stroll around Trinity College, visit Howth and its beautiful harbour, or enjoy the breathtaking view from the Dublin mountains. Then round it all off with some live music at the famous Temple Bar. Flights from London start from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Smart explores Dublin. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
Go, go, go.
10 ordinary people.
Come on, guys. Move.
250 grand.
Look at all that money.
One incredible heist. If they can steal the cash.
We need to get out of here as quick as we can.
And evade a crack team of real police detectives.
Right, can I get on with burying 25 grand, please?
The money's theirs to keep.
They think they've got away with it. They're not going to get away with it.
The Heist starts Friday the 9th of November, only on Sky One.
If we catch them red-handed, cigars and croissants for us.
It's Prince Charles as you've never seen him before, in a joyously intimate photo album. Free inside Sunday's Mail on Sunday, page after page of enchanting, rarely seen pictures. In an unmissable 70th birthday souvenir edition of Event magazine. Plus, top royal author Angela Levin reveals what's really made the prince happy at 70. Charles's intimate photo album. Free inside Sunday's Mail on Sunday.
Would you and your business benefit from a personal approach from your accountant? At Barnes Rofe, of course, our partners have the technical skills needed to offer you first-class audit, tax and accounting advice. But most importantly, we'll work closely with you to help your business grow long-term. Perhaps it's time to see what we can do for you. Arrange your free consultation at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
So I still remember the feeling of walking into my GCSEs. I think the weeks before I wasn't aiming that high. I kind of thought good was going to be good enough, so I didn't really try much harder. But then I remember in the final lesson, we each found a note on our desks. Our teacher had written us personal messages. Mine said, if you're going to think at all, think big. And if you're going to think big, think bigger. I was thinking small, but she inspired me to think otherwise.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching.
If you started your own furniture store today, I doubt you'd call it Fishpools. But if the year was 1899 and your name was Ernest Fishpool, well, it was, and he did. Today, Fishpools in Waltham Cross is one of the largest furniture stores in the southeast with a huge range of modern and classic styles. For up to 25% off and to view our new season furniture, flooring and home accessories, visit fishpools.co.uk. That's a website, Ernest.
So today, our most popular dishes are avocado on toast, or you can have avocado with chili on toast, or there's the avocado with chorizo on toast, or you might like the avocado on toast with peppers, or there's avocado on toast with salmon, or you could try out avocado on toast with lemon.
And for those that don't follow the herd, the new Jaguar I-Pace, our award-winning all-electric vehicle. Jaguar, a breed apart.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
As I've predicted here for weeks, a deal is very, very close. There'll be an announcement, no doubt, sometime this week that there'll be a quick summit in Brussels at some point towards the end of this month, and then will be a big sort of ceremony on the 13th and 14th of December in Brussels. A deal is close, but would keeping the UK in a customs union be a price worth paying in order to get that deal? Tell me, if you think the answer is yes, call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think, actually, it really isn't worth it. It's not what we fought for. Text to 84850. Maybe you see it as a capitulation, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And, of course, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. Folks, this is not what I spent 25 years campaigning for. The idea that we're going to be stuck in something. Oh, of course, they'll tell us that there'll be an exit clause and we can leave at some point in time, and they're even telling us there's the possibility of a future economic partnership which will open up the prospect of a Canada-type deal, a prospect which somebody has described as disappearing, rather like invisible ink, after we leave on March the 29th next year. This is all about getting votes in the House of Commons, but is it worth it? Morris in Edgware, is it worth it?
Good morning to you, Nigel. Can I ask you, before answering that question, a question?
Go on.
When you proposed the leaving, the UK leaving the EU,
yep,
and as an MEP, you know all the rules and regulations, did you warn everybody that there were going to be problems in leaving?
What I said was two things, Morris. Number one, logic says a simple free trade deal should be an easy thing to do because it's more in their interest than it's in ours. And for some reason, Morris, despite the fact Mr Tusk and others keep offering it, we haven't taken it up. And number two, I also said during the referendum that no deal was better than a bad deal. And even if we're threatened, and even if there are bumps in the road, we're making a big decision that I believe to be absolutely right for our country.
I understand, but you didn't foresee all these problems that have been put in the way of trying to get there, did you?
I didn't foresee. What I couldn't have foreseen was a British Prime Minister that simply didn't believe in it, and that's very much what David Miller was just saying, wasn't it?
Oh, and by the way, following that on, especially what the gentleman was saying before, you talk about Mrs May and other people feel about other leaders. It depends on people behind the scenes, because if you take, for example, that Mrs Thatcher all those years ago supposed to have had power, then how was it she was usurped by other members of her party?
Well, in the end, they brought her down. Yes, that's true.
But yes, but she didn't have power, did she?
Well, for a long time she did, but hey.
No, it's no good saying people have got power then, but on the other hand, there's an important line was put. You asked the question,
yeah,
is it worth the price
yes.
regarding leaving?
Yes.
Was it worth the price that it cost to keep the Nazis away from this country?
Absolutely.
And other parts of the world. Was it worth the price?
Yes.
Of course it was.
Yes, and the price of the Spanish Armada, and you could argue that all through history, that actually some things aren't about money. I mean, this country bankrupted itself in 2 world wars, and we did it because it was a right and it was the principled thing to do. So, no, Morris, there are things that matter more than money, and I have always argued that. Absolutely.
Fair point. So let's get the business people on the air and let us hear from them what exactly they want to do. The business people who we depend on, not the governments.
Well, the trouble with that, Morris, is there are 2 schools of thought. There is one group of businesses, predominantly big businesses, and they've got a letter again in the Times today, who do not want us to leave the European Union. And for many of them, the EU has been good. It's been a rule book that makes it quite difficult in many industries for small and medium-sized competitors to challenge them. But they firmly want to stay in the EU, and that's one business voice. Then there's another business voice, which is people like James Dyson. It's people like Tim Martin, it is the vast majority of your local shopkeepers who say, why on earth do we need all these rules and regulations when only 12% of the UK economy is exporting to Europe? So, Maurice, you pay your money.
Nigel, just one last thing.
Yep.
Can you tell me why 28 nation governments in Europe allow themselves to be usurped by another body who, as you say, are unelected? Why is it so?
Maurice, I am against the whole European project. I want a new Europe based on nation-states being friends. Maurice, I thank you. David Mellor for PM, says Steve. Lawrence is calling from Colchester. Lawrence, is it worth it?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
No, it's not. And it's nice to hear from David. Lovely guy.
Okay.
Nigel, when I spoke to you 3 weeks ago, I was so upset with this Theresa May and what she's done with Brexit. I would never believe then that now I have made my mind up and I will be voting for Corbyn.
Wow. That's quite a big change for you, Lawrence, isn't it?
It is, but the way that she and her party are so arrogant with the Brexiteers, the only way I can do anything with the little minimum amount of power that I've got is by my vote.
Yep.
And there is nobody else except Corbyn. And I'll take the consequences with Corbyn and his government, but I am disgusted with this woman, Nigel.
Do you know, Lawrence, David Davis said about a month ago there would be dire consequences if she stuck to this plan, and Lawrence, you are one of those dire consequences, because I think there are quite a lot of people like you out there. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Conservatives very much enjoy what David Mellor had to say. Brilliant, realistic analysis from Mellor. A genuine Conservative. His demolition of Mrs May's leadership qualities was spot on. Chris in Coulsdon, I was surprised. He really was pretty withering about... Well, he basically said she's not a leader, and you can't be more damning than that. Staying in a customs union is not coming out of the EU. I get, and on Twitter I get, basically we're staying in the EU. Yes, but we will have left the treaty. So Brexit in name only. That is where this Prime Minister wants to take us. Mind you, she's getting lots of advice from former Prime Ministers. We'll talk about one of those in a moment. Blair's his name. You're listening to a Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 10:30 in time. So Parliament is going to face a big choice at some point before very long. Do they back the Mrs May deal, which basically keeps us in the customs union, possibly for quite a long time? Is it for Brexiteers a price worth paying? And I've had a few of you on already saying no. But interestingly, I'm not getting many of you calling 03456060973 saying it is, because the other opinion is there should be a second referendum or we shouldn't be leaving at all. And this middle way that Mrs May's trying to pursue has, the last time I looked, got the support of only about 10% of the country. Now, one of those firmly on the other side of the argument is, of course, Tony Blair, who writes in today's Observer, and he's basically saying that MPs should vote down any Brexit deal in Parliament and push for a second referendum. And he says, in a warning, if they fail to do so, there will be a backlash from voters that will last a political lifetime. Mr Blair, I don't think you have any idea of what the political backlash will be that could last for a very long time if you force the people of this country into voting again because you think they're a bunch of cretins who didn't know what they were doing. Oh, there'll be a backlash, all right, but it won't be on the side that you think. That's certainly my view. And that comes amidst the news that Tony Blair has cost the taxpayer £1 million over the course of the last decade. And this is an allowance of up to £115,000 a year that former Prime Ministers can claim to help them carry on with their public work. And there is a big argument over this because no receipts have to be required. We did in fact change the rule and extend it from Prime Ministers to include Deputy Prime Ministers. So Mr Clegg has been a recipient of it as well. Slightly by the by, but it is interesting how hard Blair is in campaigning to stop Brexit at all costs. I still very much think that the view of most people in this country, whichever way they voted, is why don't we just get on with it? Iris in Thetford, is this a price worth paying? I mean, Iris, if we've left the treaty, historically it's quite a big moment, isn't it?
It is a big moment, but it's absolutely not a price worth paying, Nigel. I think that the government have set this up almost from day one when they prevaricated over implementing Article 50. I think, I was very pleased when we won the referendum. I'm a big Brexiteer, but as soon as that happened, I just thought this is the start of a slippery slope, and I think it has been. I'm really sad to say that.
Yeah, no, I was saying quite sort of, just a few months after her Lancaster House speech, I was saying the great Brexit betrayal has begun. I certainly feel that's where we're going. Iris, let's put it to you like this. Imagine yourself sitting in the House of Commons with your passions and beliefs. If you vote against this deal, you risk the other side forcing an extension of Article 50 and then a second referendum. Now, I'm going to ask you, would that be a risk worth taking for Brexit MPs?
I think if they didn't take that risk, I think they're on a loser anyway, because I think this is our one big chance. You've kept saying that yourself, Nigel, all the way along.
Yep.
This is our one big chance.
Yep.
And I think if they stuff it up, and I think we'll never get another chance. So I think they have to be brave here, and really, the Brexiteers really need to stand strong
and take that risk, Iris.
They have to, Nigel. What else can they do?
Okay.
If they don't,
okay,
we're sunk anyway, aren't we? Because the prevarication will just go on.
Okay. Iris, thank you. And Iris saying they've got to stand up for their principles. Alf in Halifax criticises me. Why are you giving Blair the oxygen of publicity? Just ignore everything he says. Well, Alf, I'd like to, but you can't get away from it. Like him or not, he is still a significant global political player. He just is. A lot of you think Mellor was very, very good today, and I think his comments on leadership in particular are what have really struck home. And he's basically said that in both our main parties there's never been a time when we've had such a very poor quality to choose from. And one of you, D, agrees by text and says, when the history of this period is written, it will show we had the worst generation of politicians in modern history. Victor is calling from Kempston in Bedfordshire. Good morning, Victor.
Yes, hi.
So, is Mrs May's deal the right approach? Is it, from her perspective, the only approach?
Well, I think there's been a problem right from the start, and as you pointed out, and others, you're dealing with an ideology. This isn't normal negotiations. As far as the Treaty of Rome is, the Treaty of Rome is holy scripture.
Yep, it is.
As far as they're concerned.
Oh, it is.
And the four freedoms, as they keep repeating, are not negotiable. So when you come up against that, then and also you'll find within the treaties a lot of inconsistencies. Article 4 says that they respect the political structure and identities of member nations, but in practice they don't.
Yeah, and Article 8, I think it is, says that they must try and strive to have the best relations possible with other countries.
So, as you've also said, this is a club where you join but can't leave. And
Hotel California. Yeah, I've lost you. You've left. Oh, well, hey-ho. There we go. Let's go to Weybridge in Surrey and speak to Gary. Gary, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So what do you make of this deal?
Well, the deal's a pig's ear, Nigel, but I want to tell you that I hold you accountable for this. And not in a negative... Well, I was at Doncaster when you announced you were staying on with UKIP for the referendum and then leaving afterwards. But you left at the very worst moment because it was always going to be a stitcher. We knew the parliamentary parties themselves never expected to get a referendum vote to leave. Never expected it. That's why the Referendum Act itself was such a disastrous act with no action to follow. Right? It was just, we'll have a vote, and that was it. And that's why we ended up with Gina Miller in court, because it gave Parliament no right to act of itself. And without you leading UKIP, there was no force on the Tories to make them follow through. There was no pressure. It was all gone, and they were able to do another.
I think, Gary, the truth of it is that post the referendum, I think the electorate took the view that UKIP had done its job, and I certainly, wanted to be involved in any way I could. They didn't want me to be. So I kind of felt, Gary, at that moment in time, I'd done my job.
No, but that's the whole point. And it was also the conference. It was the job was getting the vote. That was the easy, but relatively, that was the easy part. The hard part was always going to be this bit, because those who didn't want to leave weren't going to walk away from the fight with their tail between their legs, and they have the hands on the levers of power. And the only way to fight this, the only way was to keep a throttle on the necks of the Tories to make sure they followed through with a really clean Brexit. Now, it's
well, Gary, UKIP's. I mean, hang on.
UKIP's finished.
UKIP still exists. It's got a lead.
No, it's finished, Nigel. UKIP was you. I joined. I left whatever party I had because it was you and what you'd achieved over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think when you left away, what happened? Ex-Labour Party members of UKIP shot back to Labour, ex-Tories shot back to Tories, and UKIP was left then with the Scouse fellow, and it was the whole thing was a.
I have to say, Gary, I don't think if I'd led UKIP into the general election of 2017, I could have made much impact at all, because the public basically said, we've done it. Why are you still campaigning, Nigel? It's done. We're leaving. That's what the public believe. Now, of course, it has not turned out that way at all. Gary, I wasn't going to be like Arthur Scargill and try and make myself leader for life. And I felt I'd done my bit. But, Gary, I take the criticism. I understand it. You're not alone in saying that, but I'm very pleased that I got out when I did. Robbie is calling from Edenbridge. Hi, Robbie.
Morning, Nigel. Nice
Good
to
morning.
talk to you again, old
Yes.
man. Don't forget I know your father, so be careful.
Well,
but anyway.
I know Robbie, and it's his and it's his birthday today. So yeah, as you mentioned him, so there we are.
Give him my very best wishes.
I certainly will.
Nigel, again, I will say thank you from the heart of my 80 years or whatever. Now, here's a little paraphrase for you. They need us more than we need them. And if these knowers keep on just blabbing on about why can't we get out this, why can't we have hard to... Do they really think the EU is going to give up one of its best payers just like that?
Of course not.
They're fighting us every way, everything they can. And of course, unfortunately, most of the things we bring up, they're there ahead of us, ready to say no, no, no. And I'm reasonably happy. I have no problems with Mrs. May. I'm very happy. All right, she was a Remainer, okay, but I think she's a decent, honest woman, and she will do what the nation, 17 million of us, asked to happen.
But she's not, Robbie. I'm sorry, she's not. This, signing us up to a customs union for an indeterminate period of time is not honouring the Brexit vote. And you make the point, Robbie, about how important we are as a marketplace.
Yeah.
Why she hasn't... And I know they've used the Northern Ireland excuse to terrify her, but why we are not pursuing a Canada-style trade deal, or, if they don't want that, just leaving. That's what we voted for, Robbie. She's not really doing it, is she?
It does worry me, this, but my feeling is, once we're out, that will start the domino effect, because there's plenty of other countries are happy to leave.
All right, so leaving the treaty, then, that's the big thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, no, thank you, and that's what Michael Gove thinks, I believe, and perhaps many others too. Well, I have to say, opinions divided. Someone there in support of the Prime Minister. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 10:46. I get on Twitter, Robbie is right, Nigel. German industry call us Treasure Island for obvious reasons. I get that from Bournemouth. Yeah, absolutely. Robbie is absolutely right in saying how important our market is to the United Kingdom. Where I disagree with Robbie is I don't think Mrs. May is using that card and playing it as she should be. Why are we going to stick ourselves in EU rules when only 12% of our economy is exports to the European Union? I don't think that works. I don't think it honours the Brexit vote. I think it is pretty much betrayal, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, that's how I feel about it. Tom says, Theresa May shouldn't have been PM during this Brexit era. It should have been a Brexiteer. Tom, absolutely. Brexiteers would lose another referendum, and they know it. John, I really don't believe that for a moment. I do hear very disparaging remarks being made. There was a Labour MEP yesterday suggesting, it's okay because Brexiteers will all die off and all the young people will vote Remain. Well, have a look around the rest of the continent and you'll see it's the young people right across Europe who are voting for new political movements, who are rebelling and rejecting this idea of centrism, coming from Brussels. Indeed, opinion polls this morning OK, it's just one day, and I accept that, but showing Marine Le Pen above Emmanuel Macron for the European election polls that take place in 6 months' time. Jamie is calling from Newcastle. Jamie, is this a price worth paying?
No, definitely not, Nigel. Chequers is checkmate. It's Remain in another name. There you go.
That's really how you feel. That's really how you feel, Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been engineered to be rejected by Parliament, and then that'll be then used as an excuse. Essentially, the MPs are useless, and we have to give it back to you, the people. You can decide again on the nature of the deal, and it'll go down as either Chequers or no deal. And Chequers is essentially going to be the Trojan horse, which the EU has generously given.
Oh, yes. The EU are generous. We've been given the spin already. The EU are being very generous, and they're allowing us to stay in the customs union, and they're allowing us to pay them nearly 60 billion quid. Wow, exactly. That's some negotiation, isn't it?
We're being played. It's leaving everything in place for the Remainers to become returners in the future. 5-10 years' time. It's all being put in place.
Oh, I'm not worried about 5 or 10 years' time, Jamie, because it will have fallen to pieces by then. I think, well, who knows? Maybe Italy will leave before we do. Jamie, I thank you. Completely agree with Robbie, I get by text. They need us more than we need them. We are one of the 3 jewels in their crown, along with France and Germany. Of course, they don't want to remove one of those jewels. Well, Rob in Bristol, you know, we're going. June in Lowestoft says, our Prime Minister has no morals. She obviously has not considered coastal communities. When she said this year, no community in Britain would ever be left behind again. If she keeps us in the customs union, she may as well kiss the fishing industry away. Well, June, at this point is a very strong one, because actually transition and no improvement for the UK commercial fishing quotas is going to mean that by the time we do properly leave, if we ever do, there won't be much of that industry left, or indeed the angling industry either. So this matters. It matters a huge amount. No price is worth paying for losing our democracy, because it'll be the end of 1,000 years of democracy, something that has guided us well. Chris, this is not about losing democracy. The vote was to bring it back, I thought. That's what I thought I was voting for. Us to be a self-governing, independent, democratic nation. That was my view. Daniel in Cardiff, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel. I'm not actually in Cardiff, I'm in Teignmouth.
Oh, in Teignmouth. Oh, well, mistakes happen.
Teignmouth in Devon.
Anyway, yeah, I know where it is. Daniel, so pretty clear that she's going to do this deal with the EU. Our MPs, our Eurosceptic MPs in particular, will face a big dilemma, as indeed will many Labour MPs, because Labour MPs from Leave constituencies will not want to, Caroline Flint in Doncaster, for example, she's not going to want to be seen, is she, to vote against Brexit?
They want to call me government, don't they, at the end of the day? They want a Labour government.
They do want a Labour government, but they also, if you're a Labour MP and you've got a big Leave majority in a Midlands or a North or even a South Wales seat, if you're seen to vote against us leaving in any way, shape or form, it could be bad for you, couldn't it?
Well, I don't know how it's going to go with party politics, but I just think that our politicians have used up all their trust capital, and what Theresa May is doing now is just a complete and utter betrayal. I mean, if you'd allow me to, I've got a Leave EU video that you guys put up this morning, half an hour ago, of Theresa May herself speaking about the customs union. Yeah. And I've got it on a loudspeaker here. If you'd allow me to put it on.
Go on. And I'll indulge you. Go on.
All right, cool.
What you're getting out of the customs union is that we will be losing the European Union, so we will be coming out of the customs union, and coming out of it means that we can do free trade deals.
Absolutely. Yes, Prime Minister.
But you wanted Labour to negotiate a new comprehensive customs union. That would mean we couldn't do our own trade deals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually...
I like this Prime Minister. She's great, isn't she?
UK has been clear it is leaving the customs union.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I have to say is not credible to the honourable gentleman is a Labour Party policy that wants us to be in a customs union and giving all the power to negotiate...
Sorry, I have to put my phone away from my ear.
...with no say in it from the UK whatsoever.
Daniel, it's great stuff. Well done.
It involves the UK staying in the European...
Daniel can play, but Daniel...
...with the EU.
Daniel,
in plain English.
Hello?
Daniel, enough's enough. Honestly, I can't take any more. I can't take any more of her dishonesty.
It goes on.
No, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. But here's the point.
Another 30 seconds.
No, you've had your time. She has made promise after promise after promise to the British people, including in a general election, and now she wants to do the opposite. And I think...
Can I tell you what my friend from Luxembourg's dad said about her?
Go on.
I went to Luxembourg. It's quite unpalatable.
Hang on. Is it clean, Daniel?
No swear words involved.
Good.
But at the time, I thought it was an abhorrent comment. I had to leave at 2:30 in the morning on an Eastern European bus because it just made me feel, quite frankly, disgusted. But he called her a political prostitute. Is what he called her.
Right. Well, that's a term that does get used.
I had to leave Luxembourg early in the morning because I didn't feel safe there anymore. I thought, if that's how they treat us... And my friend from Luxembourg actually said to me, as we were walking down the boulevard in Luxembourg where they're building multi-million-pound European office building.
Oh, yeah.
He said, democracy is not such a wonderful thing, is it?
Yeah, it says a lot. Daniel, thank you. Michael Caine was interviewed about Luxembourg recently. He said, when I was growing up, I thought it was a radio station. Now I realise it's a country, and they don't seem to like us very much. I think he was referring particularly to Juncker. Julie in Coventry, time is short, but please tell me, is this deal a price worth paying?
No, I think it's terrible. But I wanted to ask you, Nigel, what would happen? I'm not 100% sure the way it works. If they put, instead of either of the two choices that you've given, what would happen if they put in a leadership challenge? If everybody that was to leave went behind a one leader.
Well, they haven't got the guts to do it, Julie. They've had chance after chance to do this, and they've never ever managed it.
I just wondered if that's what they were waiting for until they can't really sidestep it anymore. They've got to do something for the sake of the country.
It may come to that, but they don't seem to be terribly brave, Julie. And it seems to me that loyalty to party seems to matter rather more than loyalty to almost anything else. Julie, David Mellor said how disenchanted he was with our political leaders. I feel the same. Do you?
Yeah, well, I actually have joined the Conservative Party in the hope that it would go to a leadership challenge.
Okay.
So at least I could vote. But I think there's quite a few people that feel in the same boat. So if only they would put it to their members, I would vote for a Leave, a Brexiteer any day.
For a Brexiteer? No, Julie, I'm sure many others would. Thank you, everybody. This one will run and run. We're heading to the vital few weeks for Brexit and the key vote not that far away. Now, Donald Trump conceded the other day that the Democrats could take power in Tuesday's midterm elections, but Trump tried to reassure supporters by saying, don't worry about it, I'll just figure it out. This midterm test is a real big battle for who stays in control of Congress. I wonder, given everything that's been said about the man, how do you think he's doing? If you think he's been awful, call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you love him, in which case text to 84850. And maybe you've got a prediction for what will happen on Tuesday in America in the midterms. Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. Get involved. Don't forget you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. Tuesday is a big day in American politics. It's the mid-term elections. Let's just exactly go through what is happening. You have the House of Representatives, the lower house, and all 435 seats are up for grabs in the elections on Tuesday. The current situation is there is a majority in there for the Republicans, but the Democrats would only need a net gain of 24 seats to win a majority. In the Senate, there are 100 seats. At the moment, unbelievably, it's 51-49 to the Republicans, and 35 of those seats are up for election. The general consensus is that in terms of the Senate, Trump will keep control, but in terms of the House, he will probably lose control. Even he himself conceded he might be in for a tough time. And the way this whole American system works, it's a series of checks and balances. And ever since about 1826, incumbent presidents, be they Republican or Democrat, tend to have very bad midterm results. George W. Bush, one of the few people that bucked that trend with the elections taking place in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. So it's a very, very tough time. They have a form in America of postal voting, rather like us. It's called early voting. And as of close of play Friday, 40 million people had already voted, which is a record in terms of numbers participating in early voting at this stage. Interest in this election is huge. Passions are running very, very high. Let's listen to Donald Trump speaking about his main issue at a rally in Montana.
You saw these caravans. They don't want that caravan. And by the way, 4 others that are forming. Okay? In countries that we give tremendous amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars a year to in aid. Right? Not anymore. They don't do anything for us. They talk. They talk. They don't do for us. And that's about it for them, because I tell you what, I've had it. They call up, oh, we're working so hard. In the meantime, Honduras and El Salvador and all these places, it's horrible what they're doing to us. It's horrible. And Mexico's trying, but I think maybe they could try a little bit harder. What do you think? You think? But I will say these people were vicious, and they broke through into Mexico, throwing rocks and stones. This is the second caravan, which is made up of some very tough young people. Very tough. Criminals in some cases. In many cases. They'll say, do you have proof? Yeah, I have proof. They threw stones in the police's face. They hurt Mexican police. They hurt Mexican military very badly. They broke through. You saw it. It was on television. It was terrible. And so Mexico is trying. They are trying. But we're different. We more than try. We have our military now on the border. And I noticed all that beautiful barbed wire going up today. It was some barbed wire used properly can be a beautiful sight.
Well, that's Donald Trump, and that's a Trump rally, and that's what it's like. And in many ways, he is trying to make these midterm elections effectively a referendum on the issue of border controls and immigration. This is absolutely at the top of his agenda. And equally, he's saying to Americans, just look how you're doing. Lower unemployment than at any point since Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, and workers' wages growing at about 3.5% per annum. So he's got the economic background, but he's putting it on immigration. He's saying that with the Democrats, they'll be weak on the borders, they'll welcome in unlimited numbers of illegal immigrants, some of whom will be dangerous. Now, in response to this, the Democrats' problem is they haven't really got a leader, because they haven't really worked out who is actually in control of this party. So what have they done? Well, they've gone back to their previous leader, and very unusually, for a president that is just 2 years out of office, Obama is out there. He is back on the campaign trail.
Now in 2018, suddenly they are telling you that the biggest threat to America, the biggest threat is some impoverished refugees 1,000 miles away, on foot, got their babies with them, broke, got no money. This is And you know what? That's not enough just to lie about it. Now, they're sending our brave troops, who, by the way, by law cannot enforce laws on domestic soil. They're sending them down there for a political stunt when they could be with their families. The men and women of our military deserve better than that. That's not patriotism.
Well, there you are. Obama in full flow. And really, there you've got it. There you've got the two sides of this argument, the two sides of this debate, and remarkable that Obama has had to come back out of retirement to do this, because the Democrats don't have anybody. Now, Trump's poll ratings have been up and down. Some indications they've fallen a bit over the course of the last week, but He'll keep pointing to growth at 4.2%, and he sent the army, and this caravan will not get in. Is it going to work for him? There's a former mayor of New York called Ed Koch, and he used to, every day when he was mayor, walk down the street and just say to the public, how am I doing? How am I doing? Looking for feedback all the time. And I'm asking you, how do you think Trump's doing? We're 2 years on. I can't think there's ever been, well, there hasn't ever been an American leader that's received more negative publicity in this country than him. How is Trump doing? And if you think he's doing dreadfully, he's even worse than you feared, then let me know on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you just love him and you'd love to be at one of those rallies because you think it's all very exciting, in which case text to 84850. And any views, any thoughts on how he's doing, or even how are the Democrats doing? Why can't they find a leader? Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC. Comments, of course, welcome on Facebook too. Ben from Bristol, a regular caller, is on the line. Hello, Ben.
Nigel, we're together again.
Hello, nice to hear from you.
Calling from Babylon.
Now you are.
From Babylon.
Oh, yes.
Bristol, the Liberal capital of the UK. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
It is. It is.
Clear, Nigel.
Now, Ben, you've been a bit of a Trump fan, haven't you?
We've spoken about it before. Do you know what, Nigel? I was just thinking when I got in, I can't even remember the last time I spoke to you what the big problem was that Trump had that time. I actually can't even remember. And I said to you, it'll be water off a duck's back, he'll get through it. You know what I mean? They were talking, we're going to impeach him in a couple of days.
Well, it could have been
water off the duck. It was Stormy Daniels.
It could have been porn stars. It could have been all sorts of things, couldn't it? Yeah.
It comes and gone, But in spite of all of this, we are watching easily a guy who's done more in 2 years than most presidents do in two full terms. When are people going to wake up? Just swallow a bit of pride. It's so nice to be a Trump supporter like I am and to be willing to admit it without shame or fear.
Well, do you know what, Ben?
I want to stick with the winners. This guy's done an amazing job.
Do you know what, Ben? I'm with you. I'm with you. I was I was very, very early out there in this country saying this guy's going to win, and I supported him, as you know, and I still support him. I know his style is a little bit off-putting to some people. Comments about beautiful barbed wire, not necessarily always hitting the mark. But I think he's doing great things, I agree. I just wonder, Ben, do you think the perception of Trump in this country may just have changed? There may be a few more like us out there now.
A few closet. They're like the coming out of the closet. Well, it takes a lot of guts because a lot of people turn on you. Either people just turn on me the moment I support Trump. They go nuts. They can't cope. They short circuit.
You're going to say, if you go out in Bristol and sort of say quite loudly in a sort of a sort of a wine bar with a vegan restaurant or whatever, and you say,
we've got plenty of those.
Well, I know. That's why I say it, because I know that in Bristol. And you said you were a Trump supporter. What sort of reaction would you get?
Well, I mean, I've walked down through little cafes in the basement. They're doing like resist Trump movements, but I just smile and go to the bathroom. Look at what's happening. I mean, also, I'm a Christian. Do you know how many millions of people are praying for Trump? They love him over there. They love what he's doing because he's putting back in values that a lot of the conservatives and the Christian types that they really appreciate, and it makes the nation more wholesome and more blessed. And the Democrats, they're floundering.
No, they're in a mess. They're in a mess.
They're going to wheel. I've heard they're going to wheel Hillary out for the next one. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but you know what, Nigel? Let's have a prediction here. I think you're going to get a Trump win all round on Tuesday.
Well, Ben, thank you for your call. Thank you. Let me say this about predictions. This will come down to about 20 districts and probably margins as tight as 200 to 300 votes in 20 districts across the states. The stakes are incredibly high, and yet the number of voters who actually are going to make this huge difference are really very, very few. Anyone that says they can predict what's going to happen on Tuesday, I think they're a fool. Nobody can. All I would say is Trump is very good at being lucky, isn't he? He's very, very good at surprising people again and again and again. This massively increased turnout of early voting says something's going on, but nobody knows exactly what it is. Thomas says, best president we ever had. Christopher says, Obama was once a hero of mine, but not since the Brexit intervention. I think that's right, Christopher. I think in the UK, Obama's stock has gone down. But I'm asking you folks, how is Trump doing? Have you changed your mind? Dave, who's a new caller from Hornchurch, have you changed your mind about McDonald?
No, I haven't changed my mind. And the interesting thing, Nigel, good morning to you.
Good morning.
is to listen to those two speeches. Now, this is the question I always ask. What would Obama do about that caravan?
Nothing.
What do you mean nothing? He can't... Would he would just let them storm over the border?
Well,
I mean, I can see a lot of...
Well, Trump's contention, you can agree or disagree, Trump's contention is the Democrats will do nothing. And the Democrats say, and you heard Obama there, the Democrats say it's not a problem because it's a long way away.
What does he mean he'll do nothing? So when that 7,000 arrive at the border, what's he going to do?
Well, there are best estimates somewhere between 10 and 20 million illegal immigrants living in America right now.
Well, there's a direct correlation here, Nigel, between what's happening there and what happened at Calais.
Uh-huh.
And is now beginning to happen again at Calais.
Yep.
So what are they going to do? Capitulate and let them all in? Because you know as well as I know, if you capitulate and let them all in, there'll be 10 times that number coming behind, won't there?
The odd thing, Dave, is this. 10 years ago, Obama used to talk about immigration, saying we've got to be tough, we've got to control our borders, and yet this sort of new politics that has spread from the European Union and now through much of America and elsewhere virtually says that anybody that argues being tough on borders is somehow a very unpleasant human being. It's very, very strange. Dave, thank you. Thanks, everybody. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show. It's now 11:16. By the time Nick Ferrari goes on air on Wednesday morning, we will pretty much know what has happened in the midterm elections in America and whether Donald Trump still has control of the House of Representatives and, indeed, of the Senate as well. If he doesn't, well, it'll make it virtually impossible to get any more big legislation through in the remaining couple of years of this term. There's also the prospect, the speculation that they might try to impeach him, although I have to say, I don't think, even with Democrat control, that they would, because I think that would look like they were victimising him. I think he might use that to his own advantage. But I'm asking you, 2 years in, how is he doing? Is he better than you thought? Is he an absolute monster? What do you think? Terry, a new caller in Cobham, good morning to you.
Morning, Nigel. I've waited for this moment for a long time in my life to talk to you. I hope you're well, mate.
I'm very well.
Good. Regarding Trump, I took him at 5-1, and about a month before the US election, when Hillary Kelly's second emails came out, the FBI said about another set of emails, so I was fortunate. But I didn't know much about him. But I watched it on CNN and Fox for 6-7 months.
Yep.
Found it extremely interesting. But he has kept a lot of his word. He's a different person in different sizes, and they haven't got to say it right. I believe he's honest. That's my opinion, first of all. And a couple of things he said about ISIS. He said, within 6 months, I'll get rid of ISIS. We know they're sent all over the world, bits and pieces. But he said, get rid of them in the Middle East. And in 7 months, or just a few days short of that, he did get rid of them, hence why we've not had many terrorist atrocities, or we certainly had less, and less violent ones, and I think that's for him. I think he's very good with the economy, and also look what he's done with North Korea. Unbelievable. You couldn't have betted on that. You could have bet. I'd have betted 1,000,000 to 1 against what he's done in North Korea. And, he does want peace. That's it. He is what he is. But I'll tell you what, he's bloody honest, and when it comes out of his mouth, he makes loads of mistakes. He wasn't a politician, he's a businessman, but he says it from the heart, and I think if he's so successful on Tuesday, it'd be unbelievable, and that proves the point I'm saying now.
OK, Terry, thank you. Well, that was almost a eulogy for Trump. But you know what? I agree with much of what Terry said, because the one thing he has done, he's kept his promises. He said he would do things. He is actually doing them, and whether you like his style or not, he has been very, very effective. The trouble is, he does wind people up a little bit, doesn't he? He does say things that enrage other people. Look, if you think I've got this wrong, please, 0345 6060 973. John is a new caller from Finsbury Park. Good morning, John.
Yeah, hi. Morning, Nigel. It's a pleasure talking to you this morning.
Pleasure to have you on. So, how is Trump doing? Do you think he's better or worse than you imagined when he started?
He's much better than I thought. He's absolutely a fantastic man. He's a leader. He's not a politician. Most of these guys, they are politicians. In the build up into the election, when Trump was on the podium, on the panel with all these other politicians, they all borrow money from Trump.
Yep.
In a spit of a moment, all of them disappeared, and Trump was like, he and Hillary was the only one running. he's not a politician. He's a businessman. He understands how the world works with business, and he's delivering. And most people said that Trump is racist and all of that.
Yep.
Trump is a man, have a level of integrity. If you look at most politicians today, they have no integrity at all. They're not supposed to point fingers at Trump. In terms of the economy and how America is doing, I've been to America numerous times. Trump is a fantastic leader.
Wow.
I'm a black British, and I can say to you that, I support Trump 100%, and you as well, Nigel. I think you're supposed to go back in politics and lead this country.
Well, John, we'll have to see about that, but we're discussing Trump at the moment. And John, so when Trump first got elected, did you feel slightly nervous about him?
No, I don't feel nervous at all, because he's not a politician.
Okay.
Obviously, the previous president, he partied in the White House. He done all this shebang and all that kind of stuff. But you go to Chicago and you see how people are suffering.
Yeah, no, that's
you haven't done much for a lot of black people in America. But
no, and one of Trump's big pitches here is that black unemployment, has come down very, very quickly indeed. John, I thank you for your call. I have got this on Twitter, listening live from South Carolina. Trump is a treasonous coward, a national disgrace and a global embarrassment. He's a lying con artist for the gullible. Nothing he's done is good for America, only for himself and his rich friends, says Robin. Robin, it's very early there in South Carolina, but good morning to you. Robin, let me just say this to you. He has reduced unemployment. Wages have gone up, and you can argue, of course, that he inherited a good economy, and that's true, but he has brought a certain confidence to it, and those tax cuts have made a difference. You may not like to hear that, Robin. I believe it to be true. You can always ring us, 03456060973. Might cost a couple of bob, but hey, let's go to Peterborough to speak to Majid. Good morning to you.
Morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am very well, thank you.
Great, mate. Remember when I spoke to you about the sanctions the EU threatened the president with?
Yes.
And what I said they picked on the wrong guy.
Yes, that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah, right, there you go. Well, let me tell you, 2 years ago, when I announced to my family that I was a Trump supporter, I think they must have thought I'd got dementia or gone mad. My three lads looked at me, and all the family looked at me in absolute horror. Trump. I mean, they just went, they couldn't believe it. Now, 2 years on, my three boys, actually, they said, Dad, you were right. He actually does what he says he does. It's a shame that we can't get somebody to do the same here.
Yes, absolutely. Majid, absolutely. And I think you're right, as you say, admitting to the family you like Trump, or sort of a few years ago saying you were thinking of voting UKIP, I think, or the doctor.
That's right. I mean, my granddaughter called me a racist, basically. So my mum, she said, you can't vote for UKIP. I said, no, they're not. I mean, the thing is, people, it's a knee-jerk. You have to analyse a person to see what he's actually doing.
Yeah.
Cut away the media and all the bias out of it, and concentrate on what he's doing. And he's actually appealing to the vast majority of ordinary people, rather than the elite or what you'd like to say.
No. I mean, Majid, I think your three sons, for the purpose of this call, are our litmus test. And I think there is a shift in this country. I think more people now, respect Trump than did a couple of years ago. Majid, thank you. Going to move to Newcastle to speak to William. William, good morning.
Yes. Trump's got his good points, but he's been weak in some very important things for this country, in that when he first came to power, he was opposed to any hydrocarbon sanctions against Russia, which was, the Nord Stream and the Germans and us getting cheap Russian natural gas.
Yes.
And he was forced to back down on that, and then he showed a picture of his big signature on it, and all that. He backed down. I think he's done the same. In many respects, like he said, he's against these stupid wars, but he's got himself all tied up in Syria and things like that. So in some respect, he's actually being controlled.
Well, I think, William, in terms of airstrikes, and one or two things he's got involved in, I mean, he has not taken America into full all-out war, as many of his predecessors had done, but he has done some things militarily that concern one or two of his supporters. That is certainly true. But in general, William, he has kept a lot of promises, hasn't he?
Well, I think he has. I mean, I even sort of backed him up a bit. I think we needed somebody like him in this country to bring stimulate our own manufacturing industry and things like that. Again, look after the real working class rather than getting diverted into all these little left-wing trendy courses and so on. So from that point of view, he has done some good, but I'm still concerned that we're no farther forward to solving our energy crisis and all that. We could be now being forced to buy from the United States about four times the cost or something like that. You know?
Well, the cost will be determined by the world market, not by the USA. Let me assure you of that. Although you could argue that the sanctions that are coming in on Iran help to keep the oil price pretty high. Trump has gone for Trump has gone for US natural gas, coal, etc., and America, oil too. America is becoming an exporter in energy, and I guess for blue collar jobs in America that's great. If you're worried about global warming, it's not so great. William, I thank you very much indeed. This caller hasn't got a clue. He has yet to make a speech without a proven lie. He is dishonest, sexist, racist. That's a very short list. Imbecile. If you like him, it says a lot about you. Well, I know that he drives some people to total and utter distraction. And I know they try to take every word he says literally and say, look, this proves that he's an idiot. But the important thing about Trump is not to take everything he says literally, but to always take him seriously. And if you do that, you begin to understand what you're dealing with. I think he's doing great, but there we are. You're listening to a Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:30 and time. Maybe the midterm elections will be seen as a referendum on Donald Trump's first couple of years in office. Either way, they matter, they're important, and they look at the moment to be incredibly close and with a very, very high potential turnout. Now, one of the things that has happened in America since Trump got elected is American politics has just got more and more vicious. I see some real parallels, actually, with what's happening here in this country. And there are several low points along the way, but one of them, of course, was the Justice Kavanaugh hearings. And if you remember, he was put forward for the Supreme Court. Suddenly, a lot of allegations about him came out. One of the most extreme allegations that came out came from a Judy Munro Layton, who said that Kavanaugh and a friend had repeatedly raped her in the back of the car some years previously. I mean, it's difficult to think of allegations that are more serious than that. We went through these agonising hearings where testimony was given, not by this woman, but testimony was given on both sides. In the end, he got through, he got the votes in the Senate, and he's there now on the Supreme Court for the rest of his life. Really vicious stuff. She's admitted this weekend that she said it because she wanted to grab attention. And she didn't think Kavanaugh should be taking a job in which he could have exercise his conservative opinions for the rest of his life because she's a left-wing activist. Trump has since called her a vicious accuser. But wow, hasn't it got to something? And I have to say, I felt really sorry for that guy going through that public testimony with his family around him and some of these things being said. Perhaps a day after Paul Gambaccini gets awarded some compensation for things that were said about him in this country, we have perhaps got to rethink this. I'm not for one moment not saying that terrible things haven't happened in the past, but public accusations made without any evidence or any proof, putting people out of work, ruining the lives of some figures. I'm really worried about this culture, and I think Gambaccini is right, actually. I don't think any of this should be in the public domain until somebody is actually charged. And I do feel that that's the kind of change that is needed in this country and maybe in America too. It seems at the moment people can just chuck accusations around, regardless whether they've got any evidence at all. And there's a lot of that being thrown at Trump over the course of the last couple of years. So, 2 years on, is he doing better or worse than you expected? And I'm off to Stansted to speak to Victoria. Good morning, Victoria.
Good morning, Nigel. It's a pleasure to speak to you. 2 years on, I respect you, I respect Trump, and I am a centrist, I'm a conservative voting centrist. But my colossal fears are that you never give breath to the far right. And as we approach, the 100-year anniversary of the First World War, and we've lost Joe Cox, my concern with Trump is his moral compasses are turned down very low, and he may have done the things that he said he was going to do, which benefit the economy and benefit employment. But he inspires indirectly. He, and so did UKIP, to a certain degree. I could get on board with a lot of the UKIP manifesto, and I have no problem with you directly. I have no problem with Trump directly. But you know, and he knows, that you can, and your rhetoric can, and decisions you make, it can inspire the far right to feel confident to re-emerge for where they were put.
Well, Victoria, Victoria, let me tell you this.
In time.
Let me tell you this, all right? As far as my and UKIP's role in this is concerned, let's be clear. Not only were we the only political party in Britain who would not admit former BNP members into our organisation in any capacity at all, but, no, I haven't started yet, but if I hadn't been around, I think Nick Griffin, albeit he wasn't very good on Question Time, but I think Nick Griffin and the BNP could have become a big force in British politics. And I think I was able to appeal directly to BNP voters and say, look, if you're a National Socialist, you keep voting BNP, that's great. But if you're not, and you're doing it because you just want to stick two fingers up to political correctness and much of what's happening in your communities, then come and vote for me. Nobody, Victoria, nobody has done more to break down the far right in British politics than I have. All right, so I feel very strongly about this. You know.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, and I am a tremendous fan of yours, and I agree. Going back to what has happened in the 2 years since Trump was voted in, my concern is not that everybody's applauding him for integrity. The man is a Trustafarian ignoramus, and he. You said about 5 minutes ago on the radio that you feel the shift in this country's politics, and so do I. And I think I feel that many people in this country are extremely aggrieved, and I totally understand. The only point I'm bringing up with is
okay. I mean, should
the emergence of the far right.
Victoria, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Do you think Trump ought to condemn outright, more clearly, some of those far-right movements, some of those white supremacist movements that have always existed, actually, in America? Okay, no, Victoria, that's a point on which I think many people would agree with you. Maybe he needs to be just a bit tougher on some of these groups. Thank you. And by the way, extreme groups in America, white supremacist groups, etc., there's nothing new in any of this. It's always been there. But there are some, like Victoria, who feel he allows them a bit of oxygen. He would deny it. Maybe he should do it a little bit more. I get from Malcolm in Romford, the Don is 75% businessman, 20% statesman, 5% politician and 0% diplomat. I think that's not a bad summary, Malcolm, actually. He's torn up the rule book. Well, and he's hugely underrated. He's got great curb appeal. History will judge him more favourably than the mainstream media currently does. Malcolm, I agree with a lot of that. I think... boy, he has torn up the rule book. He is no diplomat, but he does get things done. And, Victoria said he's an ignoramus, a Trustafarian ignoramus. Well, he did inherit some money, that's true. Believe me, I know him. He's not an ignoramus. I've sat and talked with him. He wants to get things done, and he has his own very individualistic style of doing stuff. It doesn't suit everybody. True to form, Trump just puts his name on other people's achievements. Yes, the economy is better thanks to Obama. The repairs on the fence at the southern border were authorised under Obama. Robin, this is Robin from South Carolina coming back at me. That's okay. We can keep this going, Robin. Robin, he did inherit a good economy, but he has done a couple of things. It's the first major tax reform in America for over 35 years, all right? So he actually got the corporate tax structure into a place where it needed to be. And you know what? It has led directly to more jobs. Trump is a massive liar. The only reason why things look good on the jobs front is because Obama. Well, Ford, okay, fine. But you know something? He also has brought confidence to the American economy. He is a fantastic salesman. Do you know, at Davos, you know, this big gathering of the global financial elites, he was going around the room, shaking hands of billionaire businessmen, saying, hey, when you're investing in America, come and see me in the Oval Office. He's a salesman. He's out there trying to sell America. And, you know, I get by text, say what you like about the Donald, but he'd have got us out of Europe, no problem. If he was our leader, he wouldn't have been bullied by them. No, he wouldn't have been bullied by them. Mrs. Thatcher wouldn't have been bullied by them, a point that David Mellor made, I think, very, very well earlier this morning. Stephanie is a new caller from Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. Good morning to you.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
Very well. So is he worse or better than you thought he was going to be?
Well, I did think he did a lot better than he was supposed to be doing. Originally, you know, he was a businessman, a reality star. I think everyone was a bit right to be a bit sceptical of him.
Yeah.
And the thing I think that has also helped him, one of his biggest helps has been the Democratic Party. They run on nothing but identity politics.
Yes.
If you're a woman, you're constantly a victim. You can't do anything without the help of us. Like, I don't ever feel the need to have a party help me. I don't feel the need to claim to be a victim my whole life. Yes, bad things do happen, but they happen to everyone. And, you know, you get the help from your family and your friends, not from a political party. And the Democrats have just run on that, whereas Trump has really run on the issues that Americans care about, the immigration, more money in their pocket through to tax.
You know, Stephanie, I think you're right. There's a lot of this victimhood stuff and huge debates that go on within the Democrats about a lot of transgender issues. Toilets particularly seems to be a huge issue that takes up a vast amount of their time. And whilst it does matter to some people, there are other issues that matter to what we can call middle America or the flyover states that matter more. Can you see, Stephanie, the Democrats finding a new leader?
At the moment, unless they have someone who wants to run on most issues, no one's really standing out. They need what was basically as the old Democrats to come back. And then, I tell you what, Trump will have a harder time running in the next election. But
the thing is, you know, Bernie Sanders is, I think, 78, Joe Biden's 75, Hillary's 72 or 73.
Exactly.
And maybe what the Democrats need is a complete generational shift. You know, let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I was going to say, well, they're not going to have... this socialist woman, because she's not going to make it any better for them, is she?
Oh, the new one in New York. No. Well, actually, there is a mixture in the Democrats. They have picked some hard left candidates. Equally, they've picked some very centrist candidates in order to take on the Republicans in some of these seats. And so they've also got sort of, you know, ex-army veterans, etc., standing for them. It's going to be a fascinating race. Stephanie, thank you. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it is 11:45. It's 2 years since Donald Trump shocked the world by getting elected as US President, and on Tuesday he faces his biggest test to date. Some would argue it's a referendum on Trump. It's the midterm elections. All the seats in the House of Representatives are up, and a third of the seats in the Senate are too. It's going to be a very close call. It's going to be really, really important. You'll find out the results on the Nick Ferrari Show on Wednesday morning. But from this side of the pond, you know, his election was greeted, I think, I say almost universally, because there were some that supported him, but pretty much universally with horror. 2 years on, is he doing well or doing badly? And I'm asking for your perceptions of this. Caroline from Hants says, like him, love him, support him, whatever. His statement that not to worry, as he'll work it out, is just what's needed. What a leader. Well, there you are, Caroline. Some people do see him as a great leader. Others see him as a bit of a monster. I mean, Tony from Milton Keynes says, Trump is a traitor to the US Constitution and a sower of hate speech. Well, I get one here on Twitter. Sue says, I'm an expat, got my US citizenship. Trump is doing a brilliant job over here. So, as ever with Donald Trump, very strong emotions. Will is a new caller from Woolworth in South London. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Times like this, I like to take it down to the numbers.
Yes.
Talks about being scared and being horrified.
Yep.
I think if I was an American citizen, knowing that this year the federal deficit next year will rise to $985 billion. US dollars.
Well, let's call it. I tell you what. Let's call it $1 trillion between friends, Will, shall we?
Between friends.
Yeah.
There was a statistic out recently, I don't recall the actual source, but it was reputable at the time, I think it was Sky News, that a lot of this has basically gone to companies that have hoarded the money in.
Well,
so it's a huge tax cut for the richest people.
Okay.
People like, one final thought, people like Caroline, who say earlier that they will take his assertion of, don't worry, raise your hands up, hey, don't worry, kids. I just think that is just a complete platitude from somebody who says he's a businessman, but notwithstanding all the bankruptcies, we know all this already, I don't think he really is a decent businessman, Nigel. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this deficit. Where'd you go with that?
Well, okay, let's come back. On the business front, look, he had a lot of ups and downs. In the end, he's become a mega success. And he is worth $7 or $8 billion. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Well, there is, because we don't know his tax returns, do we? He didn't disclose them for the first time ever. Oops.
Well, because he doesn't have to.
Everyone else does.
And I have been and stayed at some of the Trump hotels, and I have to say they are, just extraordinary creations. He's got vision. He's good. He has become hugely successful. Will, I don't know what he was paid to do The American Apprentice, but its numbers. It's simply, you cannot believe the numbers we're talking about for that alone. Well, on the economics of it, okay. So you're absolutely right that whilst growth is 4.2%, whilst unemployment is lower than since before man went on the moon, whilst many good things are happening, there are two criticisms. The first is this. Of the corporate tax cuts, and America was very out of tune with the rest of the world on this, and what happened was, you finished up with something like $3 trillion of US profits sitting in bank accounts all over the world, not being repatriated because of 35% corporation tax. He reduced that to 21. A lot of money has come back, and some of it has come back into direct investment, and some of it has come back and given workers Christmas bonuses. But a lot of it has come back and been used in the form of share buyback. So, Will, I have a slight problem with that as well. On the deficit, you're right, he's running a big budget deficit, just as Thatcher did in the early days, just as Reagan did in the early days. The belief, Will, is that what you do is you create an economy that booms so much that you finish up with big surpluses and you start to pay down that deficit. And that is what Thatcher actually was doing for the last few years of her tenure. Does that make sense, Will, or not?
It does it makes sense in theory, and I vaguely recall that it was under the Tony Blair years we actually were paying off some debt. I'm old enough to remember the 3G licenses of Spectrum on the, in the mobile phone licenses, and that went straight on the national debt. But I think the problem is, in general, these things, we're heading towards some sort of crash now, aren't we? People say, statistically, on 10 years.
Do you know, Will, if that crash in 2008 was caused because there's too much debt around, if you look now at personal debt, corporate debt and national debt across the world, it's about double what it was back in 2008.
There we go.
So at some point, there is going to be a very, very, very unpleasant turn in the world economy. I don't think it's just yet, but at some point it will. And what America's got to hope, and what Trump's got to hope, is that he's able to get to a position of surplus and start paying some of that debt back. We'll see.
These cuts, though, will then filter through the various ways that you just outlined and the ways that have been mooted about,
I think,
investment, and eventually that 900 million deficit will be eased, if raised ideally, but eased via increased expenditure from those cuts, essentially.
Yeah, look, ordinary folk have had a small tax cut in America as well. The corporate one was the big one. Not all of it's gone to the right place, Will. I accept that. It's difficult, but I think also America was just so outdated in terms of its corporation tax rate that they had to do something. It's not a perfect word. Will, you raise a very, very fair criticism. I'm amazed at you, Nigel. You rave on about Trump. Have you lost your marbles? Anne, if you've been listening to me for the last 2 or 3 years, you'd know that I don't rave on about Trump. I'm prepared to accept. Of course, there are criticisms of style, and I just talked about corporate tax and the way in which it hasn't quite worked out, perhaps, as some would have liked. But would I prefer him to Hillary Clinton, who wanted the European Union not just to be strong, but to basically expand? She wanted America to join a hemispheric common market. I know I'm happy where I am. Let's go to Taryn, who's a new caller from Kenton. Good morning.
Hi, Nigel. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Welcome. So is he better than you thought or worse than you thought 2 years on?
Well, to be fair, I think he's always been good. I mean, he was liked in New York by all the lefties down there before he started running for presidency. So, suddenly everyone changed their tune. So,
some would argue, Taran, that actually he was for more years a Democrat than he's been a Republican.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot for New York as well, and he's always been a favourite for the celebs and the rappers out there, always mentioning in their rap videos, etc. But now suddenly they want to post some, videos of them assassinating him and things like that. So it's funny how things change. And,
I think he has made some breakthrough with the black community because it's been a very difficult issue for the Republicans.
Definitely, yeah.
85% of the black vote in America has been going Democrat, and there is evidence that Trump is making some inroads there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call anyone who says that they speak on behalf of the black community viable at all. They don't speak on behalf of the black community. He's done more for the black community than the people who claim to be on behalf of them.
Okay, so you're pretty impressed, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, he's not a politician. I think it all comes down to what the media think of him, because they seem to control everyone's opinions these days. And I noticed that I consider myself someone who's been, like, red-pilled. I don't know if you heard of that term.
Red-pill? What does that mean?
Basically, what it means is that you stop believing the crap that you hear in the media.
Oh, right.
And you start doing your own research.
Okay. How old are you, Taran?
I'm 34.
34. No, I've never heard of the term red pill. I have...
Never?
No, I've never heard of it. Perhaps it's me. Perhaps I'm a fuddy-duddy. I'm out of touch. I'd never heard of it. There you are. Well, you learn something new every day. Taran, thank you very much indeed for your call. I'd never heard of that. Have you out there have heard of that term before? Well, gosh, there you are. Well, we live and learn. OK, Tuesday, the midterms. It really is going to be a big, big deal. At 7 a.m, you can tune into Nick Ferrari, and we should know pretty much where we are by then. So another week of excitement. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and I'm going to be back tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. This afternoon at 3, it's Ian Payne. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
It's from the film The Matrix, Nigel. It refers to suddenly realising that all the assumptions we had about life have suddenly been blown away from us.
Well, I've just learnt it.
It's like an awakening.
Well, I've just had one.
You were clearly red-pilled many, many years ago. Coming up,